Hello and welcome to the meditation conversation. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and today I am joined by Stacia Aashna. Stacia is a clinical hypnotherapist and life coach who went from having debilitating panic attacks and feeling trapped in trauma to embarking on a transformative healing journey and living a life of true joy. For the past 10 years, Stacia has been helping people bloom into their confident, courageous selves and realize their true potential. She utilizes tools like internal family systems, therapeutic imagery, mindfulness, inner child healing, and breath work to help her clients achieve lasting positive results that once seemed unimaginable. So, welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So, tell us how you got started in this journey and how you ultimately broke free of trauma.
Hmm. Well, I definitely would not say, I'm free from trauma. I don't think trauma really goes away. But it definitely gets easier to manage, to live with. Yeah, that's a big question. But it's like so many people that get into work of helping others. Of course, I overcame a lot of things in my life, and I'm continuing, still doing this work, still very dedicated to this work. But I grew up in a house where I experienced abuse and poverty, and I've always been a very sensitive person. So as a child, that that was all very difficult for me, and I wound up kind of shutting down. And as a teenager, suffered with depression. And in that time, what I knew was there was this contrast of experience as I was having all of this depression and my house was unsafe. One thing that I did experience where I could feel this contrast to everything I was living at home was I learned at a young age, and this was with the help of just growing up in a family that really appreciated nature. I spent a lot of time outside. So I would just retreat out into nature. I would skip school. Like my junior year of high school, I got pulled into the principal's office and was told I set a record for the most days missed
Oh,
of
wow.
any student ever.
Congratulations. Wow.
But what I was doing is I was going to, like, this sounds silly in some ways to people, but I think I was doing what I intuitively knew I needed. And I was going out to a forest preserve and I was reading books. And that was how I cared for myself. So on the surface, while it looked like I was this like bad kid, I was doing what I needed to do to take care of myself.
It's so
Because
funny because as you said that, I was like preparing this comment of like, and I'm sure that the trees gave you an award that that afternoon for the most presence of any junior in high school to have with the trees and
totally.
in nature. Yeah.
You're so funny. Yeah, exactly. That wisdom of the forest. So like, yeah, it was totally just a safe space for me. And um, as somebody who is also, I, I was, and a lot of people who might listen to this, if you grew up in a traumatic experience, you often find that you become an old soul, which just means you have to, sometimes, yes, you might be an old soul. And then, it also might be that you had to grow up too fast because of your environment, because you had to
Yeah,
handle a
and
lot of difficult experiences.
right, and that insecurity, you learn how to read people really well because
Oh
you're
my
like
gosh.
looking for, what, okay, how are things? Is the ship upright? Are we tilting? So
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah,
Hyper vigilant.
yeah,
Yeah, very hyper vigilant. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there are certain superpowers in these things as well. Like, people who go through very difficult experiences are often very good at reading their environment and reading people.
right.
So yeah, I was basically just trying to get through those years and um, trying to get through everything it was just so difficult. And once I moved out of my family's home when I was 18 and went off on my own, then I at that time I had already started exploring. I think I was really led to yoga and meditation through Henry David Thoreau. And I mean, his philosophy is very similar in a lot of ways to Eastern philosophies about spirituality. So I found yoga and I started practicing yoga as a way to calm my mind and, of course, to like become more flexible. But what wound up happening was at 18, 19, when had moved away, I got really into this yoga practice. But what was happening is I was spending a lot of time in shavasana, which, if anybody knows yoga, it's the final, like, people usually do this throughout a yoga practice, depending on what kind of sequence you're doing. But the end of yoga, you're always laying on the ground. They call it corpse pose as well. And I just loved laying in shavasana because I'd get into this, what I now know is a meditative state where my mind was just really calm, relaxed. And I just loved feeling that way. So I kind of had this evolution, this natural evolution of finding different tools that helped me to get into a place that was just more calm and focused. I wound up finding great teachers, a meditation teacher at the age of 21 who, I was initiated onto a spiritual path, and that changed my life. I got psychotherapy, in my early 20s, and I still see a therapist. So all of that has, it's a combination of all these things, and it helped me to experience a different way of living. And my life is totally different than it was. I used to, as a result of all of that trauma, I was suffering with things like panic attacks that were so severe that I would have fainting spells. Uh, so yeah, it was pretty it's pretty challenging, uh, and but now I have all these wonderful tools that I was given by awesome, wonderful teachers, and now I'm able to share those with my clients.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that and your vulnerability. And I know that anytime we have to kind of look back when we've had such a painful past, that takes courage. And
Oh, thanks.
so I really honor and appreciate you stepping back into that for us.
Thank you.
And it's beautiful how you have been able to utilize that. It's
Mm.
such it's and so quickly. It was kind of like late teens, early 20s. You're already kind of finding healthy outlets and recognizing, hey, this makes me feel good, and hey, maybe my experience that I've had, and the bad along with the healing that I've been able to find,
Mm.
if I put those things together and mobilize myself, then I can help other people, and that's really powerful. So what a huge gift. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Yeah. And when I was going through all of that as a teenager, I definitely didn't like have great self-esteem. So I didn't
Mhm.
realize, like, now I look back, I'm so proud of myself that I,
Yeah.
well, again, it was misperceived by most people around me and thought I was like, quite a troublemaker. I was so innocent and I was genuinely trying to help myself. And in so many ways, I think I was doing just what I needed to do. And
Mhm.
I'm very grateful that I found those resources when I was young.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the tools that you utilize are internal family systems. And we haven't really explored this on the podcast. So, can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Absolutely. IFS is so internal family systems is abbreviated to IFS, so most people will refer to it as that. It is a therapy modality created by a psychologist named Dr. Richard Schwartz, and it's been around for quite a while. But just in the last few years, it's become increasingly popular. There's a number of celebrities who have written about it and talk about it openly, so that helps. Obviously, and more and more people are finding it and they're experiencing it and having such wonderful life-changing results. It's a very experiential therapy modality, so it's not it's not like a traditional talk therapy where you just kind of sit and you talk about your what's going on. In IFS, there's the model is that we all have what is called self energy, and that is the center, the core of a person, and it embodies qualities like calmness, connectedness, compassion, courage, confidence, and and then we have parts, and our parts are labeled as either protectors or exiled parts. And the exiled parts are the parts of us that hold those deep wounds. And then the protectors are the sort of our defense mechanisms. And what we do with IFS is we're working to get into a differentiated place where we can and very similar to mindfulness, step back into this energy, into the self energy, and observe with curiosity the sort of what our parts are doing. And a lot of these parts are operating from old stories, and they are actually stuck in the past and reliving past experiences. So, you might have a pattern in your life where you're still sort of operating from this whatever, maybe it's a past trauma, something that happened to you, and your consciousness is still sort of there. And in that case, we want to update and integrate that part into the present so that that part is aware that that's no longer reality, and this is what's going on, this is where we live today. um, so it's ultimately what we're trying to do is to become self-led, where these parts of us are no longer like fragmented or separate from self. We integrate them into self energy, into presence, into our present awareness, and through that, the extreme uh, behaviors of the parts or the extreme feelings just relax and transform naturally. Nothing goes away, nothing needs to be fixed. It's all about just transforming through that self energy. They will naturally start to heal, and then our essential qualities come back. Things like curiosity, things that you might have had to repress or lose touch with, and because you had to take on these extreme jobs. Like, sometimes if you're a child who goes through trauma, you grew up in a household that's scary, you might lose touch with things like your creativity, and a lot of that can now safely return once your system is really updated and integrated into the present.
Oh, wow. So with the internal family systems, then is the family part of IFS those pieces, or is it
Yes.
really working with the nuclear family? I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, we're talking about this sort of family. So your internal family system would be your parts, and
Okay.
so those protectors, those exiles. Um, right now, I'm in an IFS level 2 training, though, that is for couples, where we can look at how people's parts in relationship interact, and it's fascinating.
Okay. Wow. So is there like role playing that's part of it, so that to help you kind of go back into where the root of these pieces come from, or like how, or is it just by witnessing, just by going in and
Witnessing.
observing? Okay. And
Yeah,
just
exactly.
noticing, becoming aware of those patterns and
Yeah, so your witness so we do a lot of witnessing. There's, what you would do is you would step back, and typically you would start by just locating the energy of a part in or around your body and really just focusing on it, getting often it's kind of a slow process of just really observing, what a part is doing, and then we will usually, depending on the person, we'll start to engage with that part, and that looks different for each person. Some people are very visual, so they might locate the energy of a part in their in their chest. Maybe it's a part of them that's feeling scared or panicked, and then we'll focus on that energy, that feeling and sensation, and then we'll see if there's any words, thoughts, or images that are associated with the part. And some people who are very visual might instantly get the impression of, like, a version of them at some age, and then they'll see that, and then we just kind of witness, and then they will start to engage and befriend that aspect of themselves. So that's like, those are the first steps, is we want to go into befriending, because
okay.
often we're not really in relationship with our parts. They're unconscious from us. or sometimes we're just very critical. We don't like parts of ourselves. Uh,
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you talk about the exiled parts
yeah.
because, it's really a rejection of part it seems similar to, like, shadow work, is another
Yeah.
term that you hear a lot, and it's this incorporation of the parts of us that we wanna deny,
Hmm.
but they are a part of us,
Hmm.
they can't be integrated if we keep denying them.
Yeah. And that
Um,
denial is usually it is an effort to protect ourselves because we're scared to face, that we're scared to face what exists there. And so, and I think that's important to distinguish that any protective aspect of your system, it's the intentions are good, even if
yeah.
it's repressing or rejecting a part. It's
Mhm.
that might have been what you learned to do in order to get through something very difficult. And at one point in time, that might have actually worked. If
Right.
you grew up in an environment that wasn't supportive, maybe that was what you had to do, was to
Mhm.
reject and repress those feelings, because it
Right.
wasn't a safe space to be able to feel those things. But now, when you're in a safe space in your life, now you can start to bring those parts back in. They don't have to
Mhm.
be rejected anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, this ties in pretty well with inner child work, and I know that
Totally.
you help people a lot with their inner child. Can you talk about the importance of our inner children?
Yeah,
Our inner
I
child?
love that you said inner children because it's actually I think that we have more than just one inner child.
Mhm.
People have so many different versions of themselves that you can go back and meet. But yeah, inner child work is wonderful. I do a lot of age regression hypnosis with clients where we'll go back into childhood and work with the inner child, and it's important because just like I was discussing with IFS, what happens in our lives is often we go through difficult experiences and we get kind of stuck in these situations, and our consciousness today is sometimes still sort of functioning from those spaces. You might have unresolved trauma or fears that you're still playing out. Maybe you grew up in a house where you really had to shut down and be quiet because it was scary. And then in your adulthood, you still struggle to really feel grounded and assertive in yourself. And maybe there's specifically people that you might be around where you get triggered back into those feelings in childhood. Say if you grew up in a household where you had very domineering parents who yelled at you, and then as an adult, you find yourself with a domineering boss who yells at you, all of a sudden you're like triggered right back into that that wound of childhood and
Right.
just getting really
Yeah.
scared. And while
Mhm.
you might feel naturally like in your day to day when you're not around triggering people, very calm, centered and confident, it's like once you're around that person, oh, now I'm right back into that child self. So we go back and we meet these parts of ourselves, and we don't just meet them. We want to, just like in IFS, bring that child self, take that child self out of that past experience that might have been scary, and bring them into the present so they don't have to live there anymore. So that's a very active experiential process I'll do with clients where we just kind of offer to the inner child, hey, do you want to come, would you like to come with me, or would you like to leave that scary experience, and bring them into the present or take them somewhere that's safe so that they see that life is really different right now. We don't we're often if we're working together, it means that things have changed. You're no longer in that situation, and but sometimes the inner child doesn't know that. The inner child thinks that
Mhm.
we're still there, like,
Yeah.
oh. So, yeah, inner child work has been very profound for my clients and for me as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, it's so nurturing, it's such a
Yes.
loving practice for yourself to acknowledge the vulnerability and like you're talking about bringing that into the present. It's really touching. That's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
I like my work is so based in love and nurturing. I
Yeah,
think that that is truly the way to heal, is through self-acceptance, self-compassion,
right.
and love. And things
Yeah,
just, that's what people are really craving, is what I see
that's
with
so
people that come to me.
important. Yeah, beautiful. Well, I also wanted to talk about the therapeutic imagery because I really don't know a lot about that. So, can you talk us through this tool?
Sure. So in hypnosis, therapeutic imagery is a natural part of hypnosis, uh, especially if I'm working with people who have very creative minds and are visual. If that's not the case, that's okay. We don't have to we don't have to use therapeutic imagery. But it's just using the imagination to as a tool to create images that we can kind of focus on. So if you've ever taken like a guided meditation journey, the person that's guiding you through that is likely using therapeutic imagery. They're asking you to walk down the path, and along the path you see different things. And um, and when I'm using therapeutic imagery, I'm often using therapeutic imagery as a metaphor for whatever issue it is that we're working on. So it might not be like a direct representation of, the experience. We're using it metaphorically and kind of creating a story almost, in a way that is helpful to help them, if the intention is to release something or to create a new neural pathway, of one that is, focused on creating a new healthier pattern or habit, then we'll use therapeutic imagery to help guide that process.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
then I'm very familiar with therapeutic
Yeah.
imagery,
I was going to say, I
in a
bet you are.
meditative yeah, in a meditative sense, because our imagination or our quote unquote imagination is really, really powerful and it can really open doors. And this is one
Yes.
of the things that I teach in my meditations is that so often we block ourselves with our
Hmm.
imagination. It's like we want to know, is this real? Is it my imagination? And it's like very black and white, whereas our imagination is this really powerful gateway.
Yeah.
And some people, like you've said a couple of times, where it's like some people are more gifted or more lean toward the visual, and it's easier for them to come up with visuals. And some people like are totally blocked. So if it's
Yeah.
like picture yourself walking through a forest, it's like, nope, I can't see it. So it's like, well, what can you feel it? Can you imagine it, rather than like feeling like you've got to get the picture right, but somehow if we just bring our imagination into it, it's like, okay, I may not be like having to get the visual right, but I can play with my imagination. But
Right.
it's like this secret doorway to get us to actually embody real emotions, real healing, real results. It's very mysterious that way. I mean, I think it's mysterious. But
Yeah, it's really fun. I'm super visual, so I love any sort of, I mean, it just comes really natural, like creating imagery for clients.
uh-huh.
And some people's brains are just work differently, and
Mhm.
it's not a problem necessarily. Some people do have blocks, and and that's where IFS can come in handy, is to really see what's going on there, the parts or part of them that might be blocking that process. And then other
Mhm.
people just, they're just not very visual. And in that case, we might use more, maybe the sense that they have more connection with is like feeling or like physical sensation. So in that case, we
Right.
might, I might do more like using energy as a way to help feel what this feels like in your body, feel it coming through your body. We use lots of feeling words. I've plenty of
Right.
clients that I've worked with over the years that are like that. Or if some people they're okay with visuals, but metaphor doesn't really work for them because they don't have, their mind is not very creative. They like, they're more logical.
More
So they want
rational.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, they want more of like a very straightforward, direct, descriptive experience that feels more
Mhm.
grounded in reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's beautiful that you have all of these tools to help and recognizing the different strengths for different people so that, you can work to bring that wholeness, and bring them
Thank you.
into that embodied expression of who they are. That's
Thank you.
wonderful. So how
Yeah.
can people find out more about you and the work that you do?
So, yeah, I would love to hear from anybody that's, anything that's been said here today resonates, and you're curious more about what I do. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is just Stacia.Aashna, and feel free to DM me there if you're curious to connect. And my website, which is StaciaAashna.com. There are applications on there for connections if you want to get on a quick call with me, learn about my coaching and my hypnosis work. I also have a group in Chicago that I lead. And there's in the bio of my Instagram, there's an application to get on my mailing list for my events in Chicago. And I have a virtual group as well for women. And it's sort of like a virtual support group for women who are looking to connect in a conscious and safe environment with other women who are on the healing journey. And that's just that we just started that last month, and it's beautiful. It's such a, I love bringing women together, where they may be feeling lacking in their community, and put them
Mhm.
together and say, oh, we can create a community here where we can
Beautiful.
all be seen and heard and support each other on this journey.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, I'll have that information in the show notes so people can get to it easily.
Thanks.
Well, what a blessing to be here with you today. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.